I know what you are probably thinking. Are the Bluebloods really back on time? And is my Monday instantly going to be better because of this? It's probably yes to the first question, but maybe not for the second. But we're going to go ahead, kick off this episode by breaking down the end of MACtion in 2020. And then we're going to move on to discuss the latest of the college football stars that have opted out of the 2020 season due to COVID concerns. And we're going to end it a little bit differently. 3 segments today. We're going to end the show breaking down the new 2020 Pac-12 schedule that was just recently released. Guys, even with 3 segments, we always got a full show. So let's kick it off. So yesterday, the Mid-American Conference, or the MAC as most people know it by, announced that the 2020 football season will be postponed until spring of 2021, hopefully. If COVID isn't wrapped up by the spring, or they have a vaccine or a better way to treat it, they could just cancel the season just entirely. Brett McMurphy of the stadium reported that Northern Illinois was the straw that finally broke the MAC. We probably should hold a moment of silence at the end of this segment for MACtion in 2020, but this was a huge domino due to the fact that now, apparently today, a little bit late yesterday, the Big Ten is trending on making a similar announcement that they're going to cancel their 2020 season. So, Brandon, I know the past 2 days have been terrible, but what's your take on this? And do you think out of all conferences, the MAC is going to be the reason we don't have college football this year?
You certainly hope not, right? I mean, the MAC has never really been much of a leader, but more followers. I mean, I understand they make a few steps out of the ordinary. Like, for instance, everyone loves MACtion. They play football on Wednesday nights. What's not to love about that? So that's the first thing. But I don't know if it'll be this kind of domino. I understand the Big Ten is in talks of canceling their season, but do you really think that the MAC is what's making them choose this? No, there's no chance, right? I mean, they're the Big Ten. They can make decisions on their own. And from the reports I've heard, it's been like I want to say, I think it's Michigan who's leading the charge on that for canceling the season. And if anyone knows Michigan very well, and Zach will be the first one to speak on this, they just don't want to lose to Ohio State again. They can't do it. If they do it, then Zach thinks he's fired. I don't think they can fire him. But we've talked about that 1,000 times. Go listen to any other episode if you want to hear that argument. But I don't know. The MAC canceling their season seems odd. It seems odd to say that they're going to be the ones to lead this charge. I don't know. I really, really hope not, I guess is my answer to this one.
Man. So I guess it's Michigan. I mean, so it's bad enough to lose to Ohio State normally, but the only thing worse is to lose to Ohio State in October now. So like usually they get to lose to Ohio State, then they're going to go on, lose their bowl game to whoever they may play. It could be South Carolina, could be Florida, could be Bama like last year. But now you get to lose to Ohio State, and you still have regular season games to play for. So it doesn't bode well for Michigan. I'm sure Harbaugh probably is. He complains about a lot of things, Brandon. If you told me there was a coach complaining about something, my first guess would always be Jim Harbaugh.
I'd go with Dabo Swinney.
Oh, well, he's a very, very easy second pick. But, I mean, so this is not MACtion stuff here. We'll get to that in a second. But, Brandon, speaking of Harbaugh, what was your take on him and Ryan Day's situation? Did you see the exchange they had at the Big Ten conference call?
Yes, Jim Harbaugh needs to stop talking is what he needs to do.
Guys, in case you don't know what we're talking about, on the conference call, apparently Jim Harbaugh is also a dry snitch and supposedly was snitching on Ohio State for violating some sort of Big Ten rule. And Ryan Day told him to worry about his own team and not them, and that he hopes there's a mercy rule in the Big Ten next year because they're going to hang 100 on their bleep. Well, now Michigan put that up in their locker room, Brandon. It's a big poster in the meeting room for Michigan.
So they can look forward to that because it's going to happen.
That's what I'm saying. Like, are you serious, Michigan? Like, the Michigan players, Jim Harbaugh walked back in that locker room and the players were like, listen, we're going to have a team meeting. Sit down, Jim.
Sit down. We get to talk.
You better tighten up your khakis because we got something to say. But no, back to MACtion. I mean, can we agree, Brandon? On this is real deal. This might sound like a joke to people who don't know me. Can we agree that Northern Illinois gets no more invites to the cookout?
Oh yeah. They're banned.
They're banned from everything. They don't get a bowl game invite. They don't get a playoff. They weren't ever going to get a playoff invite. But it took Northern Illinois, Brandon, to shut down MACtion. And on a more serious note, I mean, it does beg the question. I mean, does it really only take one team to bring these conferences down?
It's starting to sound like it, right?
I mean, so you're the Big Ten. They have so realistically, Brandon, how many national championship contenders does the Big Ten have?
This year, I'd say Ohio State and Penn State probably. Well, Micah Parsons isn't playing, so just Ohio State.
We'll get to that in a second. And I mean, Minnesota had a big loss. Maybe Wisconsin, if they find a way to replace Jonathan Taylor and that defense takes the next step. So let's just say 2 at max. I think we can both agree on that. 2 at max. You have Ohio State, then maybe a dark horse. So if Rutgers doesn't want to play, are we shutting down the Big Ten?
Yeah, if Maryland decides that they're sitting this one out, I mean, are we going to cancel it?
Well, so I looked at the odds. So Northern Illinois wasn't even, I believe, in the top 7 in odds to win the MAC this year.
Right.
And so you're letting a team that really wasn't probably going to compete for anything significant shut down an entire conference of schools. I mean, Brandon, is there any way? I don't even think the SEC was shut down if a high-profile team like A&M said they weren't playing.
Yeah, but I think I get what you're saying, but I think the Big Ten shuts down if Ohio State says they're not playing, and the SEC probably shuts down if Bama says they're not playing.
Well, okay, that's different. I mean, so that'd be like in the MAC this year, Buffalo was a huge favorite to win the MAC this year. So that'd be like Buffalo announcing they weren't playing. But if you have a team that's not even in the top 7 in your conference, then how do you let them decide?
That's fair.
Understand. I mean, so, and Brandon, I know you saw this. We didn't really talk about it outside of the podcast, but we both knew about it. We shared it with each other. I mean, the unofficial report that if the Big Ten, which is the odds-on favorite to shut down the season next, and then I think they said the Pac-12 maybe, if the Big Ten shuts down, teams like Ohio State, Penn State, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska, they're going to be looking for new conferences. And how much money could this lose, like the Big Ten or the Pac-12, if they shut down? Because not only, Brandon, will you have players or teams that leave, what about the players that transfer?
Yeah, I mean, players that transfer. And I think another very valid question right now is how much money does this make for the conference that takes on Ohio State or takes on Michigan or takes on whoever is going to shut down their conference?
A lot of money. I mean, so I'm trying to think. So I think the ACC, the only team that can maybe possibly leave, I think it's going to be teams with national championship potential, because I think rebuilding teams like Florida State or Washington, who has a bunch of new pieces, or a team like Arizona not going to compete, or who's a Big 12 team, or Baylor or something like that, I don't think those teams would leave. They're going to be okay with taking a year off and getting everything together, but why would Clemson, Oregon, Oklahoma, Texas, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, why would these teams want to sit out when all these teams are going to be preseason top 15 and have a real shot at a national title? Why would you want to take a year off and risk that?
You wouldn't. I mean, and we see that becoming abundantly clear. I mean, I know this is yesterday for everybody listening, but Trevor Lawrence tweeted out today saying, "We want to play." I mean, it's abundantly clear that these contenders are wanting to take the field. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, the teams that could shut down a conference probably aren't going to opt out of the season this year.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, so, Brandon, another thing is, the MAC was already scheduled to lose over $10 million in payments due to just just I guess out of conference games against Power 5 teams being canceled, and so this could have far reaching implications for the schools involved here. I mean, Title IX implications. I mean, so the thing is so if a sport like women's tennis is canceled, that means a men's sport has to also be canceled because you have to keep that balance. So just because it might not affect football per se or baseball or basketball, I mean, there's some of these other athletes who are on scholarship getting an education that could be out of a scholarship very soon.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. I can't help but feel like maybe the Title IX rules might be overlooked a little bit this season for some sports. But, yeah, I get what you're saying.
And we've had this segment on the podcast. We're not going to get too deep in it, but I'm still real skeptical about spring football, man. I mean, yes, there's not a lot of NFL prospects in the MAC, but if the Big Ten tries to move to the spring, that could spell real danger for some of these Big Ten teams.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because what's there to play for? If you're the only conference that cancels, you're not playing for a national championship at that point.
Right.
So I don't know. But like Kublick said, like you have said, spring MACtion is going to be a hit on TV.
Oh, man, I'll watch it.
Actually happens. I mean, NFL is going to be probably done. NBA is still going to be a pre-All-Star break most likely, and there's a huge gap for football content because the XFL, yes, it got bought by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but that's not going to be ready to roll out next year.
I don't know, man.
Do you think so? You think he's going to roll it out in a few months?
I mean, who knows?
I think I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that. I think that's gonna be a whole nother year before that happens.
I mean, I guess we're gonna see
minimum. But we're gonna go ahead and move on here, guys. Talk about another sad segment here until we get into some more upbeat college football content. But as of 12 p.m. today, over 30 players have opted out of the 2020 college football season, and this includes some of the biggest stars in college football. I mean, Rondale Moore at Purdue, Micah Parsons, Penn State, Gregory Rousseau at Miami, Rashad Bateman, Minnesota, Neil Farrell, LSU. I mean, all have decided to opt out and prepare for the NFL draft. Some younger players have opted out, but they're planning on using either their redshirt year or hoping the NCAA gives them an extra year of eligibility, and they're going to come back and play next season or into the future. But we're still waiting on the NCAA to decide that, and other players such as Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields have released statements that they're 100% locked in on the next season. And just to say the least, Trevor Lawrence has been outrageously vocal about that we should have a college football season this year. I mean, Brandon sent me a few tweets. I mean, this dude's tweeting like every 30 minutes reminding people that we should have football.
He's like, yeah, don't forget, football is scheduled right now. So
exactly, and other big time names. I mean, Deion Sanders called out everybody for opting out.
Yeah, he did.
And said that the game's bigger than them and all this. And we'll break that down in a second. But Brandon, what's your take on this? And what team do you think has suffered the biggest loss so far?
Penn State, and it's not close, has suffered the biggest loss so far, and Micah Parsons. I mean, potentially the best college football player that would have played this year opted out. And so, yeah, that's a big game changer for Penn State. They're not going to be the same team. Like I said during the last segment when I was talking about how Penn State might be a national championship contender, then I remembered he opted out, and then I immediately said, well, never mind, not him, not Penn State.
No, not at all.
I mean, that's how big of a difference it is. Yeah, I mean, so obviously, I mean, to me, it's far and away Penn State has suffered the biggest loss so far. And I'm sorry, what was the first question? I got hung up on that.
It was just what's like your overall take on this?
I get it. I guess, I hate to see these players opt out just because I'm selfish and I want to watch really good football. But at the same time, I mean, I get it, I mean, Neil Farrell, he tweeted out, he was either last night or this morning. I remember reading it, and he talked about how his family is susceptible and they're kind of in a high-risk demographic. And so for that reason, he's going to sit out. And I was trying to find a negative comment. I couldn't find a single negative comment from LSU fans, and I'll be the first to admit LSU fans kind of suck sometimes. So, I felt like they would be kicking this kid while he was down, but I mean, everyone was uplifting him, talking about, do what's best for your family, do what's best for you, and he's coming back next season. He mentioned that in the tweet too, which I'm sure gave a lot of people hope. But I mean, that's going to leave a big hole in LSU's defense. But I get it. These kids don't want to catch this virus. They don't want to pass it on to their loved ones. They don't want to spread it. And I can't fault a kid for not wanting to do that. Now, if it's a thing where these kids aren't wanting, if they're using this as kind of like an excuse to be like, well, I don't even have to play this season, because there's a pandemic. But if their true intentions are, hey, I don't want to go out there and play this season, I'm just going to go on to the NFL and get paid. I mean, that's a different conversation, I believe. But if it's strictly, hey, I don't want to catch this disease, I don't want to spread it, I don't want to put my family in danger, I 100% understand.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I understand, like you said, the reasoning behind these decisions, because a lot of these players, especially players like Micah Parsons, Rondale Moore, et cetera, what do they have to gain?
Yeah.
Can Micah Parsons go out on the field and improve his stock any more than he already has?
No. I mean, look, the kid's great. He's a fantastic football player, and he's going to go on to the NFL and do big things, I think. But if he would have gone out and played this year, is there a single way that he could have impressed us? I mean, we've hyped him up so much. Is there truly a way that you think that he could have impressed us this season?
Not even. There's nothing he could do to change my mind that he's not the greatest linebacker in college football right now. And for me, I mean, especially because they didn't get the whole spring, summer to prepare the same. So a lot of these players could have went out there and not played as well as we expected, and it wouldn't have really been their fault.
Right.
And so I get it for these big guys. I get it for players, there was a rumor, I'm not going to confirm or deny it, that one of the Auburn players that opted out did it because Auburn's losing two of their best linebackers to the draft after this year, and the player said he wasn't going to play, take his red shirt, quote unquote, and then come back next year and he'll have the starting spot.
Yeah.
So you also use it like that, and I don't mind that. It is what it is. But, selfishly, like you said, I'm upset because I was looking forward to seeing a lot of these players play. I mean, Gregory Rousseau, I mentioned him on the podcast, and I had people come up to me and it's like, I've never even heard of this kid. And now no one gets to ever see him suit up for Miami again. And same with like Micah Parsons. I mean, the real deal hardcore college football fans knew who Micah Parsons was, but a guy who watches his favorite team play might not have known who Micah Parsons was. And Rashad Bateman, he was going to be one of the best wide receivers in the country, and no one gave him any credit because he played for Minnesota. And listen, Rondale Moore is the one I'm most upset about. We got 1 year, Rondale Moore, Brandon. Let that sink in. He got hurt last year, missed the entire season, and now he's gone. You got, I believe, he played 14 games at Purdue and was one of the most explosive players in the country. You get 14 games of him, and he doesn't ever get to suit up for Purdue again. It's just such a sad situation, man. I literally hate this so much, but I'm gonna go with two teams here, like you said. Penn State. It's hard to argue against Penn State, man. I mean, how do you replace Micah Parsons?
Right.
Like, that school was on our list of the best linebacker unit in the country because Micah Parsons was just that good.
Yeah.
Is Penn State even in the top 10 now?
No, they're not.
And like you said, we're getting ready for predictions, guys. It's coming in like this next month or so. I don't know about you. I was really having a hard time not picking Penn State to really push Ohio State for the Big Ten championship. And now with Micah Parsons gone, I don't even know if they're a top 3 team in the Big Ten.
No, look, I'm telling you, Micah Parsons was that good.
It's weird. And it's so weird because I don't think some people understand that, because they're like, they lose a middle linebacker and they drop that far. And if you're that good, if you're that much of a generational talent, yeah. Because I mean, if you take Isaiah Simmons off of Clemson, that team's not the same.
No.
And if you take who's someone off of, if you take Derek Stingley off of LSU's defense last year, that defense takes a drastic step back.
Right. I mean, if you take him off the defense, if you take, even on the other side of the ball, without Joe Burrow, what is LSU last season?
Well, I feel like quarterback's different. Like everyone understands how much of an impact a quarterback is. But
then if we were to talk about, if you took Justin Jefferson off the team, then what?
Yeah, and even Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I feel like he was underrated. If you take Clyde Edwards-Helaire off that team, I think LSU loses to Auburn.
Right.
I think LSU could have lost to Alabama down the stretch because people forget the Alabama game. Yes, LSU jumped way ahead. Clyde Edwards-Helaire carried that team late in the fourth quarter to close that game out. If you take Clyde Edwards-Helaire off that team, LSU could be a 2-loss team last year. And I'm not saying that just because I'm an Auburn fan or I wanted LSU to lose or anything like that, but like those two games, Clyde Edwards-Helaire made a ridiculous impact. And you can even look at the Florida game. The Florida game is where at least I thought Edwards-Helaire really took that step forward against Florida. And that's where like I started noticing him like, hey, this kid has a serious impact on this offense.
Yeah.
And even if you took someone like Thaddeus Moss off, yes, he might not have even been a top 3, top 4 target for Joe Burrow, but there were times where Joe Burrow relied on him to make plays.
That's true.
And I know it's hard to believe, and that's why I also have Miami here, because Gregory Rousseau, I said Miami could compete for the ACC title because that defensive line was that good. Well, you take Rousseau away, I don't know if Miami even finishes top 5 in the ACC now.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a fair enough point. I mean, he was really going to be a game changer.
And it kills me, man. I hate to see this, but I feel like it goes perfectly within this segment, and this is kind of like, I guess, just going off track here a little bit. I mean, so I know Deion Sanders' comments really rub some people the wrong way. I'm sure you got the same kind of impression there, but what do you think his point that he was trying to get across was? And like, do you agree with his tweet? Do you think it should have been worded different? Like, what was your take on his like statement about players sitting out?
Yeah, it definitely. I don't even know if it could have been worded differently. I just think his mindset's wrong. He's acting like football is going to fix everything, and that's not the case. This is a lot bigger than just football. Yeah, I know he made a statement that football is bigger than this. I don't know if it is. I think it's a little short-sighted. I don't know. I think it's very and as we said at the end of the segment, we both said that we selfishly want to see football this year. Yeah, but at least we mentioned that we selfishly want it. He was acting like the players were being selfish for wanting to sit out to protect themselves and their families.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I get what he was trying to say, and I think it came from a place of like, hey, I learned this as a player because he had this big personality. He was prime. He was, he thought that like, and I think what it's saying is, if you look at the NFL, I mean, Peyton Manning retired, Deion Sanders, Lawrence Taylor, like whatever great you want to say, it's like, man, how are we ever going to get another prime or another Lawrence Taylor? And then someone like Aaron Donald comes along, someone like Pat Mahomes comes along. It's just like you thinking that you're opting out is changing something, or like, hey, this makes a bigger impact. It's like, yeah, it might impact your team for a year, but I think he was just trying to say that like, hey, like, and I don't, so, and listen, I don't know if he was directly talking about just the players who opt out or even talking about like the Pac-12 protests and saying that even if y'all sit out, the game's bigger than you. Like, you're not going to, like, you sitting out is not going to change what football is. And I feel like this is where people get in trouble. I don't know how you feel about this, Brandon. I feel like when Twitter limits how much you can put in a tweet, it makes certain people rush stuff and then they don't get their point across like they meant to.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, if you have something that important to say, record an interview, do a do something, do a small YouTube video, go live on Instagram, go live on Facebook, go live on Periscope, which is Twitter, and say what you got to say. But once you limit yourself, what is Twitter, 140 characters still, or what did they up it? 280, yeah. So in 280 characters, you have a statement like that to put out, and you're shortening words, you're trying to leave words out, and then people just can take your tweet and misconstrue it. But I know at least people I talked to took it the absolute wrong way. I mean, they were like, how can you chastise these kids for sitting out? And I don't think that's what he meant to do, especially because his son is about to enroll in at FAU, I believe. That's where he just committed.
That's
and
crazy.
It's like, well, I don't think he would do that because he coaches high school football. Like, he coaches one of the best high schools in Florida, and now you think I don't know where he was going with it, but I don't think he meant anything bad by it. But I know that it was taken completely wrong by everybody.
Right.
And of course, the last thing I just want to mention the second before we move on is Trevor Lawrence is the biggest advocate for college football. Like, you would figure that someone who's already in the conversation for the greatest college quarterback of all time wouldn't mind not playing. This dude might want to play more than anybody else in college football, and I do not know why.
Right. Dude, look, I don't understand what he's trying to prove. I get he wants to get back out there. He wants to show everybody what he can do. And I think this kind of speaks to your whole thing about how you think he's staying for 4 years. I mean, he seems to be pretty locked in.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But, guys, we're going to go ahead, move on here. Third segment of the day. Keep this episode rolling. It's the segment we started last episode. Almost every conference has released their schedule for next season. I think we're only waiting on the Big 12 out of all the Power 5s, I believe. And so Brandon and I are breaking down each conference's schedule. Check out last episode for ACC. We're not going to make our official predictions yet. Stay tuned. Those are coming. But we're going to debate on who got screwed by this new schedule, who has the easiest schedule, and who caught us the most unlucky breaks of all time. Brandon, let's start with what team has the easiest schedule in the Pac-12 right now.
This one was kind of tough for me. Because it is the Pac-12, I guess, is why I'm going to say it's a little tough for me. I don't know that this even kind of compares to, like, even the ACC, right? Because the ACC was, I don't know, the ACC was at least, I mean, there's Clemson, there's, well, what we thought Miami was going to be, there's Pitt. I mean, there's all kind of options there. Like, it can be tough. And so you want me to choose the easiest, I guess, right now? That's what you said?
Yeah, the easiest. But well, it's also hard, like, before you start that, like, the Pac-12 plays, unlike the ACC who added Notre Dame, the Pac-12 plays everybody. Except I think every opponent plays.
They miss one team.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Yeah, they only don't play one team. So it's like, yes, like there's the 5 best teams in the conference. Like, mostly everyone plays at least 4 of them. And so It's really, really hard to distinguish. So for me, at least, I don't know if you did this. I looked really, really hard at where the game was played and in what order the games were played and where that bye week was strategically placed for some teams.
Yeah.
I feel like that was the only way to do it.
Well, at first I was like, well, let's find the team that misses Oregon, and that's UCLA. And then you realize that UCLA still has to play Utah and Washington State, who's going to be decent. They have to play USC, and all those games are at home, but they still have to play them. They didn't. I mean, I get that they missed Oregon, but they didn't get a single. I guess they didn't get a single one of those on the road. I'm kind of talking myself into that one. I'm going with UCLA. I think they got kind of a break here. They don't have to play Oregon. They don't have to play Oregon. They get USC at home. They get Washington State at home. Utah at home. The toughest game, I guess, for them is going to be an away game at Washington. Other than that, I mean, their away games are Oregon State, Cal, Colorado, and then Arizona State's another semi-tough one.
Yeah, I like that pick. I went with, for the easiest for me, I went with Cal. And Yes, I know what you're thinking. This team plays USC. This team plays Oregon. It plays Arizona State. It plays Utah. Those are arguably four of the best teams in the Pac-12, but they get most of these at home. Their one tough one, I think, is at USC week 2. That's the biggest road test this team faces, but their other road games are Oregon State. They're going to be good, but I don't think they're going to compete for the Pac-12. They play Washington State. They lost Mike Leach. They lost Anthony Gordon. That team's going to be rebuilding next year. Arizona's a dumpster fire. We've already talked about Arizona on this podcast and how much we hate Kevin Sumlin. And then you get Arizona State, which I think is a very, very good team who's a dark horse. But Cal is also a dark horse, so I think that's going to be a good game. And 3 of their road games are against the lowest tier Pac-12 talent. And I think that's what gives Cal the nod here. And, Brandon, they do play Oregon, but they get their bye week right before Oregon.
Right.
And so that gives them 2 weeks to prepare for Oregon. And then their other big game against Utah, they get Arizona, who's arguably the worst team in the Pac-12 the week before.
Yeah, I mean.
So they get 2 breaks, and I think this is Cal. Like, if you didn't catch my appearance yesterday on Couch Coach Live, go check that out. I think Cal is probably the sneakiest team in the Pac-12 in terms of their potential, and this schedule only further helps them in the long run. And Brandon, I don't know if you did honorable mentions again. I did, and I think Oregon had a huge benefit in terms of their schedule because they get Arizona State, Washington, and USC at home, which are their 3 toughest opponents. And if fans are allowed, which is going to be mind-blowing if it is, that's even a bigger advantage. They do get Cal and Utah on the road, but let's just say I think Utah lost a lot of talent to the draft. I mean, Bradley Anae and Zach Moss aren't going to be replaced overnight. So I still think Oregon has the advantage there. And like I said, Cal's a dark horse, but are you taking a dark horse or a proven contender like Oregon, who literally almost made the playoffs last year?
I'm taking Oregon every single time.
Yeah, and before Arizona State, Brandon, they get Washington State, who's rebuilding. They get a bye week before Washington, arguably one of their toughest games. And then they get Stanford, who just lost a quarterback, and they're in this weird in-between place between rebuilding and competing. They get them before Utah, so they don't have 2 really tough games back-to-back on their schedule. And for them being probably the most talented team on paper, they got a big break here in this new schedule.
Yeah, they definitely did. And so I know when I was trying to talk myself out of UCLA, the team that I originally picked was Oregon, who had the easiest schedule. And, if you heard any of my reasoning as to why UCLA has the easiest schedule now or caught the biggest break now, is because they don't have to play Oregon. Well, Oregon also doesn't have to play Oregon. And Oregon gets to play Colorado, Washington at home, Arizona State at home, USC at home, Stanford at home. I mean, everything you just said, I don't know. And so, yeah, I fully agree with you there.
Yeah, and, I always hate putting you first, man. I feel like I always just set you up for failure on this podcast. I'll go ahead and start with the hardest schedule here. Dude, listen, I know we're going to get to this when we get to the SEC schedule about some teams who should lead the SEC because they didn't care about their feelings. This poor Washington Huskies team, man. Holy crap. Are you serious?
Yeah, it's tough.
You have a team with a brand new, first ever, he's brand new at head coaching. He was a defensive coordinator in Jimmy Lake. You get a brand new quarterback trying to replace an NFL talent. You get a new offensive coordinator, and you have to replace people on both sides of the ball. Your top corner in, Elijah Molden just opted out of the 2020 season. So you get absolutely in a full rebuild. And your 4 road games are Cal, Oregon, Utah, and USC, which are 4 of the 5 best teams in the Pac-12, and you're the 15. That's I mean, so you're going to trust a first-year quarterback, head coach, and offensive coordinator to go on the road against some of the most talented teams in the conference in a COVID-altered season where this quarterback hasn't had any time to build relationships with his offensive coordinator or wide receivers. You have a first-time head coach who's trying to get the program up under, and not only that, he's trying to replace a future Hall of Fame coach in Chris Peterson.
Yeah, no, and this was also my pick. Washington, I don't know. And the thing is, at least the SEC did the smart thing. You know, we talked about that. You and I have talked about the SEC off air, and how I guess Missouri made somebody very upset because their schedule is just the worst.
Yes.
Them and Arkansas, because Arkansas has to play Georgia and Florida, I believe. So I don't know who they upset, but. Pac-12 can't even get this right because they scheduled Washington, who's potentially, you know, they always finish toward the top of the Pac-12. They gave them the hardest schedule by far.
Yeah, it was almost hard to do an honorable mention because it was hard to compare to how bad Washington got screwed.
Right.
I mean, and Brandon, not even that. So you're like, okay, well, they have to have some easy games. Everyone does. Yeah, they get Washington State and Colorado, but they're both on a Friday night. They get 2 Friday night games, which is always a recipe for madness in the Pac-12. A Pac-12 after dark game on a Friday is the worst case scenario for a team. I mean, and the 2 teams they get are 2 teams with first-year head coaches as well, where you don't know what they're going to pull out of the bag. We've seen first-year head coaches exceed expectations, and you get Washington State and Colorado on a Friday night. And so these are 2 teams, no expectations whatsoever. So they're going to throw everything at you. And I think this is a recipe for absolute disaster for Washington here. I would much rather have a Oregon game on a Friday night than 2 teams who don't care and can just absolutely throw everything at you, because that's more dangerous than anything to me.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. That's crazy.
And I'm sure we might have the same honorable mention. Poor Utah, man.
Yeah.
I mean, good Lord, because their last 5 games, guys, Arizona State, Washington, Cal, USC, and Oregon.
Right.
In a row. No bye weeks. They got to play back to back to back to back with these guys. And it only makes it worse, Brandon. USC's on a Friday night. So they get a short week in the midst of a 5-game stretch against 5 of the top 6 teams in the Pac-12.
Well, I've never understood, and I love MAC. I love MACtion, and I love that they schedule games in the middle of the week. But I'll never understand why schools do this. I mean, college football is on Saturday night. I get that they want to be on TV, but these kids are students. You're just taking them on the road on a Tuesday night, or like you have to leave on Friday, maybe Thursday to go play this game. If you're the Pac-12, I mean, that's just, to me, it spells disaster.
And to make it worse, Brandon, they get a Friday night game on the road against USC out in LA. The next week, they go on the road again to Oregon. So they get the 2 best teams in the Pac-12 on the road back to back.
Right. That's nuts.
Are you kidding me? And then a huge trap game. We talked about Friday night games. They also are one of the teams that get 2 Friday night games, and they get UCLA the week before a bye week, right before they head into this brutal stretch. Utah could be looking forward to that bye week, and UCLA could smack them.
Right.
This is going to be brutal, man. I feel bad for. I mean, you gave 2 of your top contenders the hardest schedules in the conference.
Yeah, I mean it's. I don't understand. The Pac-12's trying to self-implode at this point. Like they always self-implode every single season, and I didn't know what to attribute it to, but I guess it's the leadership at this point, right?
It's something, man, but. The Pac-12 is going to be an interesting place this year, man. I mean, we're going to do our previews for conferences really soon, and I am super excited for the Pac-12 because I think there's some dark horses, but looking at the schedules, man, there are some teams who have some real gripes. And, next episode, we're going to cover the SEC. And I know Brandon has some takes on the SEC schedule because there are two teams that I would just cancel my football program with that schedule.
There's no reason to play anymore.
None. Guys, that is going to be a wrap on this episode. We appreciate all you guys listening, man. We wanted to be on time for once on a Monday, improve everybody's Monday for a little bit. We'll both be at work. I know we both would rather be anywhere else than at work. But listen, guys, social media, Instagram at @_Bluebloods, Facebook at the Bluebloods Pod, Twitter at the __ Bluebloods. Big announcement. Your boy made an appearance on another podcast yesterday. It's out everywhere. It's out on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. Anchor. Look up Couch Coach Live. I did a Pac-12 preview with him. He was dope, man. It was such an awesome appearance. And we're in the works. Me and B-Dub are making another appearance. And any chance we get to, talk about college football, I feel like we're both going to jump at it. But go check out his podcast. Give it 5 stars. And while you at it, go ahead and give us 5 stars. Rate it. Tell everybody about the podcast, man. We appreciate all you guys tuning in. You guys keep tuning in, giving us a reason to do this. We're going to keep dropping episodes to the end of time. But for right now, we out.